had known Sven Robinson as an MP. And then one day he said, look, there's this wonderful person who I've met, referring to Michelle Douglas. And I think she'd be a great person to bring a class action. I think it was his first question on discrimination in the armed forces. She was living a tortured life. And what had happened was that she had been caught with a relationship to some other woman. And that other woman and she were both under suspicion. And then in short form, they came to her. She did so well on her internal exams, I guess, that she was offered what was the plum position, namely working for the military police as her first assignment. And the top priority of that group was, a top priority, was rooting out gays and lesbians. So there she is in this horrible position. She's in that group and she's supposed to be searching for herself. And they got a line on her girlfriend and her, and it was a horrible time for her. My strategy was to take the case by way of a complaint to a body called CERC. It was the oversight committee for all complaints about unfairness in the armed services. And it also took complaints from other parts of the federal government. So it was a complaint body. And we took it there, we had a hearing, we got a very good hearing officer whose name is out of my head, but she was a conservative, but she was a she, and that's what counted. So we called the evidence. We were in the secret room in the thesis building in Ottawa. Sven Robinson, who's a lawyer, came along as my associate, though he hadn't done any of the work on the case. He followed it very closely, and he was the driving force behind this case. So we took it to CERC and we called evidence. They called some evidence in secret. We weren't allowed to see. Anyway, we won. And we got this fabulous judgment from the lady who was the chief of the panel. And she found the whole treatment of Michelle absolutely degrading and unacceptable. And she gave us a judgment that said it all out, said this is unacceptable. It is not part of what Canadians do to each other. It was a wonderful judgment. So we're there saying, okay, I think the judgment said reinstate her and change the policies. At the same time as that happened, within days in my memory, a case came out of the Supreme Court of Canada dealing with an issue, which was whether or not that group, review committees like CERC in the federal government and established with the federal government, made decisions that were binding on the government. I would have thought, well, why set it up if it wasn't supposed to be binding? If you're feeling uncomfortable, go to a psychiatrist, tell the problems. But Supreme Court of Canada said no, in a judgment that I've never understood because it makes no sense to me. They said no. The deputy minister, in this case, the deputy minister of defense, has the power to ignore the decision. So we spent 2 years getting to that decision, and he ignored it. He said, nope, we're not changing our policy, and we're not giving her any remedy. Well, we were really taken aback. It had been a lot of energy and a long road. And appeals to that committee are rare because they're so complicated. So my next strategy was, okay, I'm not giving this up. The record's great. Let's sue the government of Canada and the minister for violating her constitutional rights. And it was a direct suit, which again is not often done. And we were asking for damages, monetary damages for the lost career. And most importantly, a declaration that the Army must forthwith cease discriminating against gays and lesbians in the armed services. I can remember some guy who was a colonel, and when I cross-examined him on why the Army needed to have these policies, he did nothing but sputter in fury. Mr. Ruby, have you ever seen the inside of a submarine? I said, no. He said, well, there's a shortage of washrooms, there's a shortage of space. You can't have gays and lesbians in that kind of context. You can't have them in a pub tent. A pub tent is small. But it was all sputtering and fury. And I said, well, okay, let's unpack that. What is the harm if another person is naked in front of you? You're now there in these all male submarines, and you don't have a sexual problem. Why would allowing gays and lesbians to come out cause a problem? Mr. Ruby, you just don't understand. And it was that military bullshit. And the other thing, this is a small nothing, but I learned a really good cross-examination thing, which was that the military mindset is one that if you speak like you're their boss, i.e. authoritatively and with a tone of impending anger, they answer yes. So you can do a whole string of questions where you get yeses, and you're doing it with nothing more than that voice, which I can turn on and off as I like. Anyway, it's very useful because you can spot that personality in real life. It works in other contexts. So there we were, and we get to the courtroom door, and they keep trying to adjourn the case. Adjourn, give us time to think. We want to talk to our superior officers, talk to the government. We have to consult and see what we can do. And we kept saying, well, there's a lot of stuff that's negotiable, but the amount of money is not significant to you. So it's not a matter that you care about. And the one thing we're not willing to give up is the declaratory judgment that you violated the Constitution. The long shot was the head of the armed forces at that time, and his name has gone out of my head, was a progressive, but he was a general somebody or other. And he didn't like this policy, just didn't sit right with him. But he was lonely amongst the other superior officer class in having this view. And they went to Prime Minister Ryan Mulroney, and they had to talk about the lawsuit. What will we do if we win? Can we settle it? Blah, blah, blah. And I don't know what Mulroney said, but he said, settle it. Mulroney's brother is gay. Something that not many people, I think, know, because you never hear from Mulroney's brother. And I don't know where he is or what he does, but that was one of the things that the lawyers on the other side told me. And it may have been no more than their speculation that he had a role, or that Mulroney was sensitive to this issue because of his brother. Can't imagine not being. Anyway, we get to the courtroom door. It's scheduled for the next 3 days hence. They asked for adjournment. We want to adjourn. We need more time. No, I said, we're not giving you any more time. We're having a trial. Be ready. And we get to the courtroom. The day before, I got a phone call saying, we're ready to agree to your terms. They didn't want a trial. A trial would have been humiliating. And I think there were those personal things from the two people who were key people who happened to be in place, who were just unwilling to go to bat for a policy they didn't respect. And that's the story. This is the key about Michelle. She's not just really smart and charming, but developed through this case into a major spokesperson for the issues. She didn't believe in the beginning that she could do that. And I told her, no, that's one of the things I want you to do. You're a plaintiff here because you're very pretty, because you're well-spoken, and because you can be the person who everybody looks to and says, she looks like me. She looks like my neighbor. She's really nice. And in those days, that was something you didn't get from most people, but people responded to her. She was just wonderful. This was a case where we thought we had a lot of really good evidence. Evidence that would shock people. That's what happened at that first hearing in front of CERC, is that they were just shocked that Canadian Armed Forces would do this. And I found it shocking. I was just appalled by it. It was horrendous. And yet the military is a unique institution in many ways, because once we got the court order, forthwith ceased discrimination, the generals all looked around and saluted. And the orders were typed up and they sent it down the ranks, and the policy changed, and the armed forces changed. The institution changed very quickly because of the military mindset and the requirement for obedience. They all respond to that. And so it was, I mean, I wasn't there and it wasn't instantaneous, but a lot of people who were there in the armed forces spoke to me about it and said it was amazing. The policy was gone. We really could get promoted and be in the armed forces, and that, and that was our life, and we loved it.